Hi, everybody. I'm Thomas Steed, a third-year management major here at Georgia Tech. Our sponsor for this afternoon's Impact session is Georgia Tech's Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship. Our live webcasting sponsor is Impact Media Solutions, and our media partner is WABE 90.1. This afternoon's Impact session will be followed by the 2009 Business Plan Competition Award Ceremony. If you've taken a class in the Klaus Advanced Computing Building, you're already quite a bit more familiar with today's speaker than you may realize. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest, Klaus, CEO and founder of Kaneva. Kaneva Incorporated is a privately owned Atlanta-based company that was founded in 2004. The company creates software solutions that enable professional and independent game developers to develop games through a virtual world of video sharing, social networking, and 3D environments. Appointed by Georgia Governor Sonny Perdue, Chris currently sits on the Film, Video, and Music Advisory Commission, where he plays an active role in helping define legislation to support the number of films and games made in Georgia. In 2004, he worked directly with Georgia's Department of Economic Development to pass a law that would promote video game development in our state. A former student of Georgia Tech, Klaus decided to share his success by making the largest donation to the Institute by anyone of his generation. In 1999, he gifted Tech with funds to construct a new building on the Georgia Tech campus, the Klaus Advanced Computing Building. Continuing his commitment to giving back, Klaus serves on boards that further technology, computing, and game development at Georgia Tech, as well as throughout the state. He's also involved with many nonprofit and philanthropic organizations in Atlanta. Please give a warm Georgia Tech welcome to our guest, Klaus.
Testing. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Is it too loud? I don't want to. Good afternoon. Wanted to talk about the virtual world, what's happening. One of the areas that I'm excited about is what's happening with the internet, and especially regards to virtual worlds. And we're going to talk about where the industry is going, talk about video games and social networks. And one of the things that's emerging is a lot of the social networks coming together into a 3D world. And so I wanted to dig into that. And as I go through this, I love interaction, so feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions as we go through here. Within this, let me see if I can figure this out. Whoa. They said it was. So within this, what we're going to do is just talk about from a business perspective, why is this an interesting opportunity? What's happening out there? Talk about the market. What's the evolution of this market? One of the things that, as we're looking at the virtual world space, what are some of the criteria that we're focused on that we think will be part of success factors? And then ultimately, what is Kaneva? What are we trying to build? And just talk about some of the evolution. And then save some time for questions, Q&A at the end. And then get to the more exciting part with the big checks over here. I see someone's buying dinner or beer tonight. There's a lot of money over here, so we'll get into that. So the opportunity, I think one of the areas that's extremely excited is as people are looking in this industry, a couple industry think tanks have analyzed this space. How many people have heard of Gartner before? Several people. If you're in enterprise software, you've probably heard of Gartner, Forrester. There's a lot of industry analysts. What these guys do is look at the industry and try and figure out how big are these opportunities. And most of the Fortune 500 companies out there would call up a Gartner out there and say, how big is virtual worlds? One of the areas is Gartner came out and did the analysis and says, you know, over the next 2 to 3 years, about 80% of all internet users will be using virtual worlds. And I think we're just starting to see the beginning of this. Really, I think it's happening at a younger demographic. How many here have heard of like Club Penguin? A couple people. If you have a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old, you've probably heard of Club Penguin. And Webkins, anybody heard of Webkins? More people heard of that? Yeah, definitely. And so these are virtual worlds for little kids right now, and they've exploded in population. If you go on there, and you can go to some of these websites like Compete or Quantcast, where you can analyze the traffic of any website. Those sites get 6-7 million people every month visiting those worlds. And long term, as kids obviously tire of the environments that they're at, we'll go into more and more mature virtual worlds. Within that, the opportunity that we're solving with an online world, ultimately, from a consumer perspective, we're seeing people going in there to, number one, really find others, make connections, similar to Facebook, socializing, what is everybody else doing, and they're taking it further where they're no longer just communicating, but in a 3D world, it's about being entertained in that world with going to a dance club in the virtual world, going to the movies together, etc. That makes it feel like the real world, except people are all over the country. And what's happening is as more and more people are spending their time in these virtual worlds, a secondary thing pops up, which is businesses saying, how do I reach all these consumers? They're spending more and more time online in these virtual worlds, these social networks, and I think there's a big opportunity for businesses to figure out, how do I get my brand and my message into these worlds? And so there's really two problems to be solved. One is, how do you get consumers to go in there? That's probably the more interesting problem. And then secondary to that will be, how do businesses reach out and talk to people who spend all their time, whether it's in Facebook or in World of Warcraft or some other world. And this is going to be a more and more an emerging area of focus. And I think what we're also seeing is that traditional marketing is being challenged because it's ultimately, people are just spending less time listening to the radio or watching TV. It's all going online. This is kind of the evolution that we see. If you look at the history of the internet, it's really evolved. One of the things that got me to where I was fortunate to join the internet very early on, and was a precursor being able to give the Klaus building, is I got on the internet probably back when it was all text UI. There was no web browser. It was all some interface called Gopher and Usenet and a bunch of. If you've been on the internet a long time, you've heard of this. But it was pretty lame. It was like a lot of text messaging, and emails were pretty straightforward. And then about 94, along comes the World Wide Web with a web browser. For the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, there's been a phenomenon called Web 2.0. How many people have heard of Web 2.0? Everybody? Okay. Some people haven't heard of it, but it's figuring out, hey, the web's not just a one-way broadcast, right? In the past, if you think about radio and TV, the mentality has always been a broadcast from one to many. And the web originally was purposed that way, where it was, hey, let's set up our website so we can broadcast to everybody and tell them about our business. And Web 2.0 really opened up the door to say, hey, now it's moving towards collaboration. It's about sharing your photos, sharing your videos, and out emerged either Flickr or YouTube, MySpace, all these social networks, and that became more interactive. The next evolution, we think, will be the 3D immersive world. We're starting to see more and more of the world's, especially with the graphics capabilities, the access to, with the internet, we're just seeing that a large number of people spending their time not just web browsing, but also in these worlds. And they're much more engaging than just watching TV. You can run around and hang out with your friends, go on adventures, go on raids, etc. So long term, more and more of this is going to start to open up. Historically, it's been very niche, the MMO, what they call massive multiplayer online space. How many people here play an MMO? Anybody? You guys aren't being honest, or you don't have enough time for World of Warcraft. But there's, I'm sure you know a friend that's into these worlds. So there's definitely a lot of activity in these worlds. You guys are too busy studying. Let's see. kind of where we're looking at from a market perspective is there's an emerging area where we think there's really no dominant player in the 3D world space. We know the projections for this space is growing and has significant numbers. You can look at virtual goods. One of the things that's been interesting is if you look at China and Korea, they've actually been on the forefront of these worlds, these MMOs. Most of them are free, where you go in and then you start, unlike World of Warcraft, there is no subscription fee, but you end up buying virtual goods. And we actually think that's going to become more and more the future of all video games. Today, you spend $50 on Madden, and what we're starting to see is Xbox and some of the other publishers and Electronic Arts, they're starting to realize, oh, people will spend more money than $50 upgrading their jerseys or upgrading all the goods. And it depends a lot on the game design. So if you're a car design, a car game is actually a lot more interesting because you end up buying a car, changing out parts, and more of the games are moving in that way. What they haven't done is linked it to a financial model. And what companies in China have done is exactly that, where if you want a better car, you spend money, $2 or $3 to buy a better engine, buy a better muffler, and next thing you know, you can race around the track better than your friends. They feel like, hey, I need to compete, I'll spend money, and so it grows in that way. And I think we're starting to see, even not just to be competitive, but even things like GIFs are becoming, emerging as a new area of monetizing the web. There's a big question. How do you monetize the web? Virtual GIFs is one of those areas that is very untapped. I think Facebook is now really starting to put a little more focus on it. Anybody send a virtual gift on Facebook? A couple people? Yeah, so it's ultimately, and they're generating, I think, about $30 to $40 million off that, and realistically, it's not that exciting. You get this little icon. I'm sure some of you have seen it. And it's $1 or 50 cents to send an icon, and so that's one way that they're making money. The other way they're making money, a lot of people don't realize, is a lot of times they'll have free gifts. And I was talking to a gentleman who worked at Facebook, and he was like, oh yeah, we just sold, like New York Times bought a ton of free newspaper headline gifts for the community to give out. And so that got the New York Times as a gift for everybody to give out. So it was ironic, New York Times was paying somebody else to give out the newspaper, but it creates awareness, their brand. People end up going to New York Times website because of that. And so there's other activities like this. So I think we're going to see more and more virtual gifts, whether it's gifts or items or some way to monetize, but it's that digital good that is going to become bigger. One of the areas is also, I think we have social networks that have become billion-dollar companies, MMO companies that have generated over $1 billion in revenue. The other thing that's starting to emerge is a lot of the casual gaming sites have really started to explode. And it's really, a lot of people don't realize this, most people think of video gaming as a very male-dominant, teenage age demographic. Actually, if you look at the casual gaming sites, it's actually like over 60% female, and those that are spending money, it's in the 30 to 40 year age demographic there. So it's actually much broader than most people realize as you go into casual games. Long term, one of the areas that I think is going to be key is merging some of the casual games. You're seeing that with Facebook opening up their API into social networks. I think the next evolution will be into a 3D world, similar to World of Warcraft, but more modern day. So one of the areas that we're looking at is what are the top 10 criteria for defining a successful world? And really, how do we merge or converge the MMOs, social networks, user-generated content? The thing that's happening, I think we're also going to see happening in games, similar to what YouTube and Flickr has done for both photos and videos. Games themselves are starting to look at how do we open up the door for players not just to play the game, but to extend it and make it their own? There's a new game called Little Big Planet on Sony. Some of you might have heard of it. More and more, that whole game is to entice you to build levels for the game. And so I think over time, we're going to see more and more games. Historically, the game designers created all the content. Like World of Warcraft is a good example where there's really very little to no user-generated content in that world. So it's all designed and decorated mostly by the game studio. What we're starting to see is more and more these MMOs really want to bring in user-generated content into that. So within that, one of the areas that we think is important is merging traditional media into a virtual world. And one of the things that's been exciting is to see like your TiVo, not just playing on your TV on demand, but can you bring your friends in to watch the TV with you from wherever they're at? And we've seen this. We did a partnership with Turner and had Family Guy in the virtual world, and whenever they did new episodes, all the Family Guy fans would show up and watch these shows together. And I think long term, we're going to see more and more of this happening as Netflix, Amazon Video. There's a lot of these services that are now becoming on demand. And what ultimately, it's okay to watch a movie by yourself, but I always find it more fun when you have a friend come over and watch a film. Well, a lot of times, if your friend's on the West Coast or happens to be in Europe, this actually opens up the door to watch a lot of interesting content together. One of the things a lot of businesses have learned or are learning is that when you go into a virtual world, you really need to listen to the community. And this is an area that I think was a lesson that came out of Second Life. I'm sure everybody here's heard of Second Life. Well, a lot of the Second Life community has been based on you come in here and you got your first life, and then you're supposed to have a second life that's alternative to your real life. They really don't want you in there as yourself. In fact, they force a different last name and all kinds of things so that you're not yourself. And I would say if you've been in there, you probably don't want to be yourself typically, because it's a pretty bizarre world. And what happened was all these brands like Coca-Cola and big brands that you've heard of have said, hey, we're going to set up a headquarters in Second Life. And there was a huge rebellion amongst the community saying, hey, we don't want commercial brands coming in destroying our Second Life. So on the flip side, what's interesting is as you create a world that's modern day, you find that people actually do want the brands in there. If it's a modern day world, you see this with race car games, right? When you're racing around the NASCAR, most of the players would actually prefer to have Pennzoil and other brands that you would see, and it looks funny if the real brands aren't there. So in that case, it's really contextual to what you're used to. And so what kind of community are you targeting? What kind of community are you building? And I think this is a lesson that was learned by several social networks. I know Google's social network called Orkut. I don't know if anybody here's ever been on there. But it started off that was in the US, and it quickly became a Brazilian social network. And everything on there was Portuguese. So if you went in there, you're like, what the heck is this? And it was a big Portuguese social network. So you got to realize what demographic are you targeting as you go into these worlds. One of the areas that I think is key, especially when you get into user-generated content, is to really, anybody who's thinking about setting up a UGC, user-generated business, has to think about where's those boundaries of what's safe. If you want to bring brands in, this is going to be a challenging part. Is the environment safe for those brands? And you can kind of see a lot of this is happening with the difference between YouTube, if you're familiar with YouTube, and Hulu. Has everybody heard of Hulu? Quite a few people. No? Hulu is like the commercial version of YouTube, where it's all the TV shows you like to watch. So, and it's authorized TV shows on Hulu. And so that's the only thing you get on Hulu, though, is authorized content, no UGC. It's all by the professionals. And what they have found is that they're able to monetize much better and actually have bigger revenue than YouTube because the content is all quality content. And sponsors want to be associated with quality content versus, I think there's great videos on YouTube, but there's a lot of not so great videos and people getting kicked and falling off bikes and other crazy things on YouTube. So like a brand goes, do I really want to take the risk of being associated with that? So long term, and I think this has been a challenge with worlds like Second Life. If you go into Second Life and do a search on stores, you end up with a lot of weird content back at you that your brand probably would not want to be associated with. But I think long term, there's a boundary where, do you want to make your environment safe? The other thing is, if you're going to create a world, I think a modern day world, your brand fits. If you're making a video game and you're trying to do Dungeons and Dragons or like a World of Warcraft fantasy thing, it's a little bit harder to bring brands into it. I've seen it happen, but it's not pretty. You got a tattoo on a dragon, and he's drinking Coca-Cola, and then when you kill him, out comes Skittles. So it's just not right. And so within that, I think ultimately you got to think about what kind of world you're building. I've seen other worlds that were futuristic, a little bit of kind of dystopia. Everything's falling apart. And the problem there is all the brands had to decay, have like a really decayed looking brand in there, and it was tougher. And you can also see in movies like Minority Report, where Lexus had their car in there, but it was a car of the future. They really couldn't brand today's cars because it would be out of context of the future. One of the key things that's been exciting, I think, is this emergence of real-time engagement where you can actually, in a 3D space, start to engage with people somewhere else in the world. And what we're seeing is, this actually was an event where this is like a cast of a TV show. So I started off talking about TV has been one-to-many, where you try to broadcast to as many people as possible. But as media is changing to more of a many-to-many conversation, this opens up the door where now the audience can actually go ask questions with the cast and get the behind the scenes. So ultimately, it's opening up a lot more doors for real-time engagement. I think this is, even though I'm looking at it from an entertainment perspective, long-term, it really has a huge, profound impact on everything from education. So imagine, you're in a classroom. This could be a classroom where you're watching a professor talk, and you got students from all over the world attending the exact same class. And so this changes how education gets delivered long-term. It's a little bit like, I guess, WebEx on steroids, in that, here's a way to collaborate and bring people together. And it's actually kind of interesting. I think we're going to see more and more of real-time engagement so that you feel like you're in the same room with other people no matter where you are physically. One of the things that's really untapped from a web perspective, and I think this is going to become more and more an area researched, is rewards and incentives. And you know this from games. Like if you play World of Warcraft, one of the things that became obvious for us is how fundamental it is. You don't even think about it, but when you kill a monster, you get two things. You get gold, which is their monetary system, and you get experience points. And those are two good incentives. One's currency, you run around, buy other stuff with. And then the experience points is a great leveling system. It's a progression system that keeps people engaged for many, many hours. And if you were to remove those rewards incentives, the game immediately becomes extremely boring. In fact, you would lose all incentive to go around the world killing monsters, etc., because after you killed a few, you'd be like, okay, what do I get out of it? Nothing. All right, this is just a beautiful world, spend about 10 minutes, and then you'd be out of there. what we're finding, though, is we're able to give out lots of rewards. And the nice thing is those rewards really don't cost anything. And at least from a business perspective, so at the end of the day, any website could create its own virtual currency, call it anything you want, and then you immediately have lots of enticements to give out. And we do it all the time. We'll give out, we want people to do a survey for us, like an hour-long survey. We give them like 5,000 rewards, and they just do it. And I don't know if they know what they're getting in return for those rewards, but they'll spend hours doing stuff, getting rewards. And then what we end up doing is there is a reward. I mean, there's a reason for it. We give from the rewards, they're able to then purchase virtual T-shirts and other virtual good stuff. And so it's an interesting opportunity. But long term, as people, if you think about Second Life, that was one of the challenges. There's really not a lot of rewards as you go exploring and finding. There's no rewards given, and people want rewards. So if you think about any game, even like Mario Brothers, that one of the earliest games. Well, what did you get? You got gold coins everywhere you jumped, and there was hidden coins, and there was. I mean, without those coins, the game would be extremely boring. And so, websites could learn a lot from video games, and I think businesses long term will start to capture more of what we've learned from video games. And in fact, there's a lot of neuroscience. I don't know if anybody here is interested in neuroscience, but there's actually a lot of fMRI scans of the brain that shows as people get these rewards, their brain lights up and they're excited about getting more coins, and you're getting stuff for free for doing little things. It turns out it's a really big deal for people in these worlds. And so within that, not only do you want to give rewards, but activities. What kind of games do you want to put in there? One of the areas that was kind of interesting is we've done a survey. Most of our community came back. We put a dance game in. The thing that's exciting is most of the people really want social games that they can play with their friends, very casual games, everything from chess, checkers, playing card games, etc. These are all games that we all like to play in the real world. The pattern translates over into the virtual world, into the online world. And I think if you looked at a lot of the Facebook apps, the most successful apps, if you analyze, like, what are the top 20 most popular apps on Facebook, you can actually learn a lot about what's Darwinism has happened to all those apps. And there's a couple patterns that emerge. One is almost all of them are games. There's some that are kind of check out your friend, and you got to, that are more viral. But most of them happen to be games. Most of them happen to have to be social, right? And they're more fun when you play with your friends. And so they all have, a lot of them have currencies. Anybody playing Mob Wars? Mafia Wars? Handful of people? Okay. And you get in there and there's a currency and you got leveling systems. So there's a lot of key things that have been, came out of the D&D, Dungeon and Dragon world, now is being applied towards this stuff. And so games will be a key part of this experience. The other thing that's been interesting is merging like Hollywood and the online world. We did like a red carpet event with Screen Actors Guild, which is like the Oscars, and people actually really got into it. They all stood in line. They all did the red carpet. And I thought it was kind of just bizarre how people would, treat it like the real world. And what's interesting is more and more as you're doing this, the patterns you can create that are similar to the real world, people respond to them just the same way. And with that, we see more and more of these events happening. And what was interesting is then you go into the event, you could actually watch the real world event. And I think what's going to happen long term is entertainment will start to morph into a hybrid model of not just physical events, where like if you go to a local bar and they've got somebody doing a song in there, they could actually start to extend their audience. We just talked to a musician who broadcast with, all you need is a laptop, an internet connection, and a cheap webcam camera. Next thing you know, you're broadcasting online, and maybe you only have 100 people in Atlanta, but you could have a couple thousand people from China and West Coast and Northeast and all over. And so what this is really doing is, from a business perspective, starting to open up a lot more doors for how do you reach a broader audience more cost effectively. One of the other things that that I think is important is as you're building out this business, if you're thinking about a website, and I think long term, if you can entice people to be creative in the community, I think we're gonna start to see a lot more creativity emerging within not only games, but almost everything that we're doing, where you're tapping into the audience to not only it's part of the game, but it extends the game. And it becomes a lot more interesting because every day somebody's doing something interesting in the world. And so we're going to see, I think, a lot more creativity happening through these online worlds. World of Warcraft, not a lot of creativity from a gamer's perspective today because it's such a closed system. But as some of these worlds open up with sandboxes where the community can augment and create new stuff, I think we're going to see a lot of creativity flourish from around the world. One of the key areas, and this is the Latin number 10, last area that I think is really important is packaging the experience. This is where marketing is starting to think about, not just how do I get my advertisement on TV, how do I just get my brand in front of people, but it's what kind of experience do I create? And this happens to be a Starbucks in Roppongi, Tokyo, and it's the same feel and sounds and everything when you walk into a Starbucks, whether it's here, DC, or in Seattle, or anywhere in the world. And so what's happening is, I think a lot of the cutting edge brands are really thinking about marketing from an experience perspective. This is why Nike invests in Nike Town, if you've been to like Phipps and some of the other areas, where it's not just here's a shoe, it's about creating a strong association with that brand. Well, with these virtual worlds, these 3D worlds start to open up, is a whole new opportunity to create those experiences for a fraction of the cost. You can get out there and figure out what experience do our users like, what don't they like, and you can simulate all kinds of different experiences. I know there's opportunities to do redesign a hospital. Well, let's put that in a virtual world, walk people through it, and next thing you know, you get a lot of feedback going, well, this is what I always hate about a hospital, waiting in the waiting room, and I wish it was designed this way and that way. And I've talked to a lot of companies. There's like, for example, car companies could learn a lot from listening to their audience by putting their designs into a virtual world and get a lot of their feedback from people in those worlds. And so a lot of what's going to happen is around, once you learn what works with most people, you can package up the experience. And what we're finding is, so with a social network, you get such a fine-tuned detail around what the demographic is, and you can see age, zip code, location, and learn about what experiences do people like with regards to your brand, and then replicate that. So with that, here's the top 10 list. Everybody likes a top 10 list usually, so figured these are the areas that we've been focused on with regards to what we think a virtual world or an online world would have. One of the things that we've been working on is a software as a service platform. I think if you were to say, hey, I want to start my own, anybody here an entrepreneur? Anybody want to start a business in the future? Everybody? Nobody? No, everybody? Within that, I think if you're getting into software, I definitely would recommend looking at the software as a service model over the traditional packaging up software and selling it that way. With the internet, it's just so much more convenient. Within that, one of the areas that we're really focused on is helping create a metagame around creativity. We really want to create rewards and incentives for people to make cool stuff in the world. And then every high-tech company has to have at least some acronym. So we came up with one acronym of, building a synthetic theme-based augmented reality. And this is a star, kind of like a website, create a star site for the world. So with that, I wanted to save some time for Q&A, questions. If anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Create something in the virtual world, how do you protect your intellectual property? And particularly if you try to take it out of the virtual world and make a physical product out of it. Has there been any intellectual property law around creations in virtual worlds?
Sure. So how do you protect your IP? The laws that apply around IP outside of the world applies within the world. So ultimately, legally, there's structures in place to say, look, if you create something, you can copyright it. I would probably also look at what is the terms and conditions, or the terms, was it the TOS, on a lot of the websites, terms of service, and if there's any implications there. Because I know usually they're all different. So like Flickr, if you upload a photograph, technically you own that, but you may be giving them the rights clearly to upload, have them display your photos, because you're implicitly saying that by uploading. But it's usually called out whether you have the right to remove this stuff, whether they have the right to take it and sell it and do other things. So usually when you share your media, I would say if you really are looking from an IP, how do I protect my own intellectual property, I definitely would double check to see what have you given away by uploading it. I think they listened. Was it Mark Zuckerberg said that's probably not a good idea, and reversed it. I think there was an outrage to that, and it left questions of what would they do with the information. So to be honest, I didn't follow the finer details of what the arguments were, why they did it, and then why they didn't do it. I mean, I imagine. Do you know what were the top reasons why they did it? Okay, I just saw it. It just happened so quick. Like they threw it out there and said, "Hey, we want to own all your information." It's kind of what the headline was, and then next day it was like, "Nope, we're not going to change that." So I didn't really pay much attention to it. It went too quick.
Chris, you shared the story told us last time. Yes, how Kaneva you did this talent sourcing. Remember using virtual world for talent sourcing. You have this. Musician, no name, let's call him no name DJ, but they participate in this virtual world. They identify this guy and made this guy famous.
The festivals. We actually did a pretty interesting thing here in town. We're fortunate to be in Atlanta with a lot of the music, especially around hip hop, being in our backyard. A lot of times it doesn't get the recognition. You usually think of New York or LA. But what we wanted to do was a hip-hop American Idol, and we did this a couple of years ago, and we're looking at doing it again. We called it How Down Is Your Sound? And, basically, we worked with a local DJ Ryan Cameron, who was on the radio. And actually, I had breakfast with him, and he was like saying he gets these, musicians are really hungry to get their music out there and get on the radio, and he said as he went out to parking lot, after he leaves work, he'd get these people, these musicians jump in front of him going, "Here's my demo CD, you got to play it on the radio." And he said this wasn't very efficient for him because he was getting hundreds of these CDs every month, and to listen to them all wasn't very effective. And so we said, why don't we have a contest where you upload your music? And we were able to get some of the local musicians involved with it, like Ludacris and Dallas Austin and other performers. And what was exciting about it was with almost very little marketing, a few shout-outs on the radio to get their music on there, we immediately saw a a large number of musicians uploading. It had to be original music, so they all uploaded it. It was interesting. That was the rules, and everybody abided by those rules. We didn't get no Britney Spears or Justin Timberlake. It was all original music to win the contest. And it started off in Atlanta, but I think through MySpace and through a lot of other online music groups, et cetera, it quickly grew to like over 2,000 people got involved on a musician side. And then one of the things that you're always looking at, especially with website capability, is how do you make it go viral, right? And obviously, if you think of LinkedIn and Facebook, do you guys know how much they spend on marketing? I know, I'll be more fair. I know for MySpace, I had a friend who was working there, and guess how much they spent on like marketing? It was like $0. And it's all, because if you think about LinkedIn, Facebook, when have you ever seen an ad for them? Never, because it's all through viral. And so one of the things that we did was we had it so the artists could get their friends to vote, and so they went out and told everybody on their campus and all over the place, whatever clubs they were at, to come vote for them, because there was a chance to win a check similar to this. And from that, had close to 1 million people show up to vote on music. So it was quite a bit of people, and that goes towards how do you reward creativity? Well, the artists got a check. We've got 1 million people audience, and within that, the artists who won, we actually had a pretty fun event. We invited the top 10 most voted artists to come to Atlanta. Half of them were from Atlanta, so that made it easy for them. Another half, the other 5, were really from either New York, Austin, Vegas, California. So within that, they all came, and there's a royal peacock. I don't know if anybody's heard of this. It's off of Auburn Avenue, and it's downtown for sure. And it was fun. They were already set up. They do kind of a competition, battle of the bands, but more hip hop style. And within that, those guys all got on stage, and they're all jumping around, and it was we had one guy that was one of the judges. Kind of reminded me of, what's the guy who's always critical on American Idol? Simon. We had a guy that was like Simon, and I felt so bad for the musicians. We're like, well, let's take it as constructive criticism. And but ultimately, they got a lot of good advice, and the group that actually won ended up not only winning our deal, but went on to sign a contract with a label. So that was exciting. So we want to do that again, and we know there's a ton of artists out there that want to get exposure, and if you can do that in a virtual world, in an online situation, I think that's ultimately where music is going. More and more music is being found that way. It's a lot more efficient. So if you have a music background, I think anybody who's out there, we're going to see more of that happening. Okay.
Hi, Chris. You talked to us about viral marketing and the budget constraints that, not constraints, but the ability for large companies who already have a large base to be able to spread their product and market it. What about for startup companies? Can you talk to us about the business model for virtual worlds? Is it a subscription-based model, or is it an advertising-based model?
Yeah. So I think those are two questions, or I'll break them apart. The virtual world business model, I think, is different for everybody. I know in our case, it's the way we think the model will end up going is, for a lot of these worlds, they'll end up pretty much free. There's a model called freemium, and the idea is that you give away 80, 90% of the value for free, and then you take 10% of what your more hardcore users will pay for, and that's the premium service, and they end up basically subsidizing all the free guys. And what's interesting about that is that model works extremely well in Asia. I think it's working extremely well in the US as well. I know for us, we see a large number of users buying virtual goods, and they end up, today we mostly sell shopping, so clothing for your avatar. You can design your home, so you decorate your home, and so you end up buying that's where probably we get the bulk of our revenue today, is people ending up spending tens, hundreds, and some of our users have spent over a couple $1,000s on a virtual home, and we like them for that. So and they get a nice home. They can invite all their friends over, and it's a beautiful place, and they can bring friends from all over. And it's a little bit of a competition. We have here's the top 10 communities, top 10 homes, and you can see that. Long term, I think we're going to start adding in additional services, additional goods around that. So I think that's the business model that we see happening. And what you're doing is you're lowering the barrier where, in the past, you'd buy a game for $25 to $50. Well, if you make it free, then there's no reason everybody can't participate. The other area that is, you asked about how does a small company think about viral. Definitely would highly recommend look at viral coefficients. You can actually measure how viral any website is if you're tracking it, especially for us. I would highly recommend it. And it's really putting on a filter of saying, how do we enable people who like this website to tell their friends? How do we make it easy to share? And you can really, if you have that filter on in terms of how you're looking at that problem, you can go on to YouTube, and you can tell the number one thing that YouTube offers is the video, obviously, right? That's the number one thing. The second most popular thing that they have done, a lot of people haven't really caught on, is they put how to share. They have the embed tag right next to it. They have put this on Facebook, MySpace, every other social network. And those, if you look at it real estate-wise, they've made that the second most important thing besides the video itself. And so they've really thought about how do we make this thing go viral. And in fact, that was the bulk of their traffic early on. I don't know how it breaks out now, but I know over 50% of their traffic early on came from MySpace and people embedding their YouTube videos. And there's any of these websites like SlideShare, I think, is another one where you're sharing your PowerPoint videos, which who would think would go viral, but you end up with a lot of amazing PowerPoints out there, despite the technology, and you get tons of viral capability. The other thing is, all you have to do is log into any social network out there, and there's all these, what we call viral loops. What are hooks to get people to invite their friends? And whether it's Ning, I don't know how many people here are on Ning, but you can go to Ning, Facebook, MySpace, any social network, and they'll give you a ton of ideas on how to make it go viral if you're looking for it. You probably don't even notice it by and large, but every one of those little things help increment the behavior towards getting others to come in. And so I would say if I was starting a small business today, I'd definitely be thinking about how do you make it go viral as much as you can, because they say word of mouth is the number one way of people kind of associating, I would go buy this. I mean, if you think about movies, word of mouth is so much more powerful. If I say, hey, this movie was great, I just saw Slumdog Millionaire, and now everybody's going to be like, oh, I heard that was a great movie. Now the Oscars has, also made it official, but, I told all my friends I saw that movie, and I thought it was a great movie. Now they're more likely to see it. And if I go, hey, here's this other movie, not so good, very likely they won't see it. So word of mouth is so powerful, and so I would highly recommend, looking at, you can Google for viral coefficient, and there's formulas that say, basically it's a percentage of how many people that are joining your site, what percentage of them end up inviting others, times the average number of people they invite, times how many accepted the invite. And the idea is if I tell 100 people, do they turn around and tell 150 people, and then does that 150 turn into 300 people and go exponential? And that's the definition of a viral video. If you tell 100 people and those tell 50 and that turns into 25, then it's a downward spiral. So you can, no matter how many people you tell, it's never gonna go viral. And so if you use that math formula, you want to be 1.01 or higher for it to go viral.
Thanks, Chris.
I'll be here after
Yeah.
this, though. I think we'll have some big.
Yeah, if you the award ceremony, he'll be glad to take some questions. And thanks so much for coming today. We really
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I stole your signal, by the way.
Oh, okay, that's all right.
First of all, I'd like to just, again, thank Chris for coming today. Am I not on?
I'll turn mine off.
Can you hear me now? Okay, great. Thanks for coming today, Chris. I turn it on. Okay. Well, did you guys hear the part about where I said Chris was an inspiration? That's right. All right. Thank you, Chris. Okay, great. But my name's Alan Fleury. I'm the director of the 2009 Georgia Tech Business Plan Competition. And it's with a great deal of pride and also a great deal of relief that I welcome you to our award ceremony today. Just a little bit about the competition. In about 15 minutes, by the way, we'll have a reception afterwards, so we'll be able to talk a bit more casually then. But a little bit about the competition. This is the 9th year that we've had this competition at Georgia Tech. It was the brainchild of Dr. Terry Blum, Terry right here, and Pat Dixon, who back in 2000 wanted to start a competition that would, in effect, encourage the entrepreneurial spirit here at Tech, but also to help develop entrepreneurial skills. By the way, there's going to be a little slideshow playing behind me, so I'm not trying to keep up with this, but it's going to just be cycling through. So the purpose of it is to encourage the entrepreneurial spirit, to develop entrepreneurial skills. The technology itself is somewhat based on the competition is based somewhat on technology ideas, although a few years back we began to introduce, and we've seen a real growth in business ideas that have some basis in environmental sustainability and also this year social entrepreneurship. So over the course of the last 9 years we've had over 550 participants, majority of them Georgia Tech students, but also some Georgia Tech alumni. We have awarded over $400,000 in professional services and cash. And we've had a number of companies make a successful start. So it's been successful from a number of different perspectives. This year, we had 39 companies participate in the competition. The competition itself actually was comprised of 8 different contests. We had well over 100 students representing virtually every college on the campus. We had undergraduate students, graduate students, PhD students, alumni, and staff participate this year. We had 12 sponsors and 63 judges, so it's been quite an endeavor. And although much of the actual team-to-team competition has occurred only within the last couple of weeks, this process actually began in September. So we've been at this for almost 6 months now. And for the teams that have participated, it's been quite a bit of work. And I'm certainly grateful to the effort they put in, and I hope that they benefited from the process. This year we introduced, as a part of the business plan competition, a new competition that focused specifically on social entrepreneurship and on ideas that could drive environmental sustainability while at the same time being economically sustainable. It's called the I2S, or the Ideas to Serve. And I'd like for Dr. Blum to come up and briefly talk about the competition and announce the winners. You want this? Here you go. You only got one of them at a time. So.
Only have one at a time. I can't do this.
There you go, Jerry.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris, for me too. How awesome is it to have an entrepreneurial icon here for the awards? And I'm delighted not only because I was one of the early ISS investors when you went public. Was that about 1997, 98 when you went public? So I'm real happy about that, but I'm also happy about all the places that I go and see the generosity of Chris and his family toward the social needs of the community. Most recently, I've been out at Camp Twin Lakes and have seen what you and your other ISS partners have done there, and just every endeavor in town seems to have your name, in addition to that beautiful building down the way. So thanks for your philanthropy as well as your success. The I2S is Ideas to Serve. It's the most recent innovation that we developed because we wanted to increase the ecosystem of opportunities for entrepreneurial learning. And we wanted to encourage more undergraduates, more ideas to come forward and to start the value chain of value creation. And so we created the I2S concept. It's Ideas to Serve. It's not a full business plan. It's just opportunity recognition. What's the need, and do you have a feasible solution? The Ideas to Serve, the SERVE is standing for socially and environmentally responsible value enhancement. And we think that that is important. It could be nonprofit, it could be for-profit, it could be for a hybrid, but it has to be somewhat economically sustainable for you to make it a compelling opportunity. There's a lot of needs, but if you can't attract the resources to meet them in an effective and efficient way, it's just an idea, it's not a compelling idea. So with that, I'd like to announce the winners, and the first two winners I'll just ask to stand in their place. And these were the winners that were determined by popular acclamation. That is, all the people who attended the reception last week got to visit with each of the presenters, and they had a chance to vote for their favorite. And the winners ended up being two. We only expected to give out one $250 People's Choice Award, but since there were two with an even number, rather than cut the award in half, we just said, hey, let's just give two. And so that's indeed what we did. And one of the teams for the People's Choice is actually the MBA team of the Net Impact, the NI Community Revitalization. So if all of you will stand, it's Mark Long, Justin Harper, Dylan Thomas, and Katie Means. And we're going to have you come up later for a picture with Chris. The other award for the People's Choice, which was tied, is Time for Life, which is Ryan Turk. And if you'll just stand up, you'll get a chance to come up later. These two, plus the other winners, will have their posters out in the atrium for you to look at and talk to them about. Well, maybe talk to them about, they may be getting their refreshments instead. And so while you're getting your refreshments and talking to Chris and the participants, their posters will be out there. Now for the runners-up. We had two runners-up at $500 awards each, and one of them was the Revolver. Is the Revolver group here? It is made up of Hans Tui, Joni McSorley, and and Hannah Hogan. Hannah Hogan. Are you three? Come on up. You come on up.
We don't have a check to give them.
We don't have a check to give them? Okay. We'll get you a picture in a bit. Don't worry, the checks are not very good anyway. You know, take them to the bank, yeah. The other runner-up, which makes a lot of sense if you were here last week hearing our impact speaker telling us that algae is the way to go for energy independence. This group is Catalgae. Catalgae, did I say that correctly? And the student winners are Joseph Abrahamson, Sanjay Chawla, Will Boyd, Kento Masayuma, and Andrew Penose. Now, this group needs billions of dollars of investment, but if they scale, they're really going to scale. So take a look at their poster if you can. Now for the first place winners, we have one in the environmental category and one in the social category, and these awards are $1,500 each, plus they get one of these counterfeit checks. One of these virtual, this isn't exactly, the money's virtual, the check, I guess, is kind of real. Anyway, the Environmental Sustainability Award went to our only staff member participant, and that is Scott Bryant for PowerWise. Come on up. PowerWise is, Scott will tell you that if you have your faucet leaking all over your house, you'd repair it. But all of the electricity that's leaking out of your fuse box, that even when everything's shut off, could be taken care of with his idea. Thank you. Can I let Ryan do his thing or no? Do I have a minute? Can I let Ryan have his minute? Okay. The Social Entrepreneurship Award winner is Time for Life, Ryan Turk. Ryan, come on up. And Ryan, you can have your 2 minutes. You'll take a picture, but start.
I was just going to tell you guys real fast what my idea is. It's called Time for Life, and it's a universal medication reminder system for illiterate patients in the third world that are infected with HIV, AIDS, or any number of diseases. What it consists of is it's a digital watch that displays symbols coordinated with pill packages so that they can take complex medication on time. HIV/AIDS medication is becoming increasingly available to third world patients through regional medical centers, but the issue is that they can't tell time, so there's no means for them to take it consistently. And HIV/AIDS medication is not effective unless it's taken on the time schedule. It's like not finishing your antibiotic. And so what this system is it's a simple digital watch that a patient wears. Throughout the day at dosage times, it sends off an alarm. They look at the watch, they see a symbol, and then they go retrieve the pill package with that same symbol and take the medication that it contains. So it's just it's a system that allows them to take complex medication independently, accurately, and consistently. So.
Are you going to contact Bill Gates and the Clinton initiative?
Yeah, that's right now we're really kind of rolling out those plans to determine who we want to seek funding from and if they'd be willing to do so. And I encourage you guys to stop by my poster that's out there and speak with me about some more of the details if you have any questions. So,
thanks, Ryan.
thank you.
Okay, now we'd like to move to the business plan competition. And in the business plan competition, we actually had seven different contests, 5 of which were specialty awards or specialty contests, and then we had our traditional business plan competition. But The first specialty award we have is called the Green Guard Environmental. It's the Green Guard Sustainability Award, and it's sponsored by the Green Guard Environmental Institute. It's given to that business plan that either best exemplifies through product or service design or through their proposed business model ideals associated with environmental sustainability. And this year's winner of the Green Guard Sustainability Award is a team called Green. Could you come down, please, and be recognized? Green won $2,000 in this competition. Congratulations. Why don't you come here and get your picture, please? Very nice. Can you just briefly explain your technology, just about 20 seconds worth?
Yeah. What a Melia product does is, you must have seen those coal-fired plants. So all the exhaust flue gases, it removes 99% of the heat from these flue gases, and this heat can then be reused to heat up the furnaces. Besides that, it also removes the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide emissions with a 95% efficiency. The size reduction would be about 72 times. So if like my size reduction half would be this much, 72 times means like I would be like this much. And besides that, it will replace a set of 3 blast furnace stoves.
Very good, thank you. Our second competition is called the undergraduate track. It's given to the best undergraduate plan. We had 4 undergraduate teams participate this year. Our second runner-up in the undergraduate track was Free Teas. Our first runner-ups were Big City Farmers and UGuide. And if any of the students associated with those teams are here today, would you please stand? You were Big City Farmers. Congratulations, thank you. And our winner of the undergraduate track is Happy Hour. They won $1,000 for that recognition. Is Happy Hour here? Why don't you stand up, please? Just keep on standing. Our second specialty award is called the Elevator Pitch. It was awarded the evening of our business plan competition reception, where we had about 16 teams participating and providing elevator pitches to the various judges that were there. The elevator pitch competition was also won by Happy Hour, and they won a $500 check for that. So please stand again. Our third specialty award was the Showstopper, and this basically went to the team that had the best trade show exhibit. And again, this trade show was part of our business plan competition reception that we had last week. The winner of the Showstopper was Syzygy. Would Syzygy please stand? And they won $500 for that. And our final specialty competition was a special one. Each year we ask alumni from prior business plan competitions to come back and try to recognize the plan they believe is the most innovative. And this year, the winner of the business plan competition alumni most innovative award is NanoShield. Would you, NanoShield, please stand? And they win $1,000 for that. So, okay, now to the I guess the main competitions. We actually have 2 tracks. One which we call just our business plan competition, which really recognizes the best written business plans as well as those that are very well presented by their teams. These plans also have to be able to have some decent prospects of being commercialized. But these are cash awards. This year we had 19 teams participate
for these awards through a preliminary round. At the conclusion of the preliminary round, we had 6 finalist teams. Those 6 finalist teams then presented their business plans in front of a panel of 9 judges last Friday, February 20th. We had a first place and a second place and a third place team. The other 3 teams we are calling finalists. Each of these teams win $500, and those 3 teams are NanoShield, Happy HR, and what's the 5th one? You guys know who you are. What? Biofiltration, that's right. So Biofiltration, Happy Hour, and NanoShield. Would you please stand? Thanks, Brian. Sorry. Okay, our third place winner in the competition is a team that has a technology that uses telemetry data that's, in effect, can track player movements. The intent is to actually use this to track player movements on a real-time basis and produce a web viewing experience unlike any other web viewing experience today for the sports fans. The name of the team is Fans Want More, and why don't you come up and get your $2,000 check. Congratulations, guys.
Pretty good description.
I just took a log, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. This business has already launched and is well on its way to being successful. Our second place team is a team that uses Georgia Tech technology. Basically, it's memory plastics. These are plastics that are malleable at certain temperatures. They can be programmed to be malleable at certain temperatures. They can also change colors. Technology like this has probably hundreds, if not thousands, of potential applications. They've chosen their initial application to be used in the form of hearing aids, earbuds, but materials that go in the ear. The name of the team is Syzygy, and congratulations. Why don't you come up and get your second place check. Congratulations, Walter. Congratulations. Thank you. Our first place winner is also based on another Georgia Tech technology. This one basically uses very complex mathematics, has developed chips that in effect uses, not digital, what's the other, it's so old I can't even remember the, analog, yeah. Uses analog technologies but actually produces a sound quality far superior to digital. That team is Audialo, and please come up and get your check. And you're also going to be awarded a buzz for coming in first place. So, coming up. Here, hold your buzz.
Oh, great.
Gotta hold the buzz up. Thank you. You can go ahead and take it back. Yeah, I'll get this to you in a few minutes. All right, we have 2 other winners we'd like to announce. We also have a second track in the business plan competition that deals specifically with those plans that are most fundable or most likely to be ready to launch and to be successful. Our first winner, which won the judge's choice, which consists of a services package of legal services, predominantly intellectual property legal services provided by Fish and Richardson, and $10,000 in professional services will be awarded to Happy Hour. So if can Happy Hour come up, please. That's it, that's the last one.
Are you going to tell us what Happy Hour does?
Sure. They also won the elevator pitch, so why don't you spend about 15 seconds and explain what you guys do.
So there's a simple problem that everyone faces today, and it's caloric management. It's easy to track how many calories you take in by reading the labels, but how many calories you're actually burning. So you have stationary treadmills, but they're not very accurate. And other devices that have been on the market in the past are bulky and expensive. So what we have is a device that's $99 that measures your caloric exhaustion by combining heart rate and physical motion.
Nice. Congratulations. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead and take it back. Okay, our final award goes to the team that was voted most fundable by our panel of 9 judges. That team will win $35,000 in professional services. Those services are provided by Nelson Mullins, which is a law firm, Gross Collins, which is an accounting firm, High Tech Partners, Adams Capital, and Bondurant, Mixon, and Elmore, another law firm. And the winner of our most fundable award is Syzygy. You guys also get a nice glass vase as well. Or you could use it as a champagne flute. Here you go. Okay. Kind of squeeze together, guys. Thank you. And thank you, Chris. That was great. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Okay, we're going to have a reception right outside, and Chris is also available for questions. A very nice reception, and Chris is available for here to take questions. Sorry, I missed biofiltration. I just had a break.